The tragic truth behind Thurman Munson's death in 1979 has been buried under decades of lies and half-truths. The official story painted him as a difficult captain who made fatal pilot errors. The media portrayed him as cantankerous and feuding with teammates. But the real story of what happened to the Yankees' heart and soul is far more heartbreaking than anyone ever told you. On August 2nd, 1979, Thurman Munson wasn't being reckless when he climbed into his Cessna Citation at Akron-Canton Airport. He was doing what he'd done countless times before, practicing touch-and-go landings so he could fly home to see his family. At 3:35 p.m., he made contact with the control tower. By 4:02 p.m., his plane was engulfed in flames just short of the runway. The events of those 27 minutes would devastate a franchise and leave a permanent scar on baseball. But here's what they never told you about why Munson was flying that day. He wasn't some thrill-seeking pilot. He learned to fly for one simple reason: to spend more time with his wife Diana and their 3 children back in Canton, Ohio. The gruff captain everyone saw was actually a devoted family man who was profoundly homesick. He openly begged the Yankees to trade him to Cleveland just to be closer to home. When they refused, flying became his lifeline, his way to escape the circus of New York and get back to what mattered most. The man behind that scowling mask was nothing like his public image. Teammates knew the real Thurman Munson was a pussycat hiding behind a tough exterior. His gruffness with reporters wasn't meanness, it was a defense mechanism. As Yankees PR director Marty Apple explained, Munson was uncomfortable with the constant spotlight and just wanted to be a ball player, not someone asked to comment on every drama. Those who earned his trust saw his unfiltered honesty and unwavering loyalty. He was the first one charging when benches cleared and the first to cheer teammates from the dugout steps. His relationship with the media was legendary for all the wrong reasons. He could be rude and dismissive, viewing many reporters with suspicion. This wasn't occasional moodiness, it was consistent behavior. Appel recalled how Munson would simply growl at him and refuse publicity shoots before becoming captain. After getting the captaincy, he'd politely agree to photo sessions and then just not show up. His interactions were often laced with profane humor that could be misunderstood. If you're discovering a side of this baseball legend you never knew existed, make sure you're subscribed because there's so much more to this incredible story. His frustration often came from feeling overlooked. He believed his defensive skills were consistently ignored compared to rivals like Carlton Fisk. "I guess the press doesn't like me," Munson once said. "In 1971, I made only one error all season but didn't win the fielding award." This sense of being slighted led to dramatic moments. After PR director Appel published stats showing Fisk leading Munson in assists, an angry Munson confronted him, calling it a stupid statistic. In the next game, Munson intentionally dropped 3 strikes, recovering each time to throw the batter out at first, padding his assist total. After the third one, he looked directly at Appel with a wide grin, proving the statistic was misleading. The story everyone knows about Munson centers on his legendary feud with Reggie Jackson, but even that's been twisted by the media. Yes, there was real conflict. When Jackson signed his massive 5-year, $2.9 million contract in 1976, it shattered Munson's verbal agreement with owner George Steinbrenner that he'd always be the highest-paid Yankee. Jackson even admitted later that Munson had encouraged Steinbrenner to sign him, expecting his own contract to be renegotiated upward in response. When Steinbrenner broke that promise, it poisoned everything before Jackson ever stepped in the clubhouse. Beyond money, it was a fundamental clash of styles. Munson embodied the old-school lunch-pail work ethic. He did the dirty work behind the plate and expected recognition through performance. Jackson arrived with brash swagger, keenly aware of his star power and unafraid to show it. This wasn't just two players clashing, it was two competing models of baseball stardom. Munson represented traditional team-first hierarchy where leadership came through tenure and grit. Jackson represented the new era of transcendent superstars, media-savvy personalities valued as much for headlines as home runs. The famous quote that defined their rivalry came from a 1977 Sport magazine interview, where Jackson allegedly called himself the straw that stirs the drink and dismissed Munson as insecure. The full quote was devastating. "You know, this team, it all flows from me. I'm the straw that stirs the drink. Maybe I should say me and Munson, but really he doesn't enter into it. He's being so damned insecure." I'll hear him telling some other writer that he wants it to be known that he's the captain of the team. Jackson has spent decades claiming he was misquoted or manipulated by writer Robert Ward. He insisted the writer prompted the analogy, asking if he was like the straw that stirs the drink. Jackson also claimed he, Munson, and Steinbrenner had already patched things up in private meetings before the article destroyed their progress. But Munson's response perfectly captured his fury. When Jackson claimed he was misquoted, Munson shot back, "3,000 words you were misquoted?" The clubhouse became polarized, with veterans rallying around Munson's leadership while shunning Jackson's perceived self-absorption. The most infamous public eruption happened on June 18, 1977, during a nationally televised game at Fenway Park. After Jackson appeared to loaf on a fly ball, manager Billy Martin pulled him mid-inning. The dugout confrontation, and with Martin needing restraint from physically attacking, his star became a national spectacle. The truth is, their feud was never the simple story of perpetual hatred the media sold old. These were professionals who shared a common goal, winning championships. They managed to coexist and contribute to back-to-back World Series titles in 1977 and 1978. Jackson himself provides the most compelling evidence that they reconciled. He revealed they eventually patched up their differences, and the peace was genuine enough that he made several trips on Munson's airplane. Former teammate Roy White confirmed this, saying there was never any real feud once they got to know each other. What made Munson truly special wasn't the drama, it was his incredible talent. He was arguably the second best catcher of his era behind only Johnny Bench. His resume reads like a Hall of Famer. 1970, Rookie of the Year, 1976, American League MVP, 7-time All-Star, and 3-time Gold Glove winner. He holds a distinction no other player in history can claim. He's the only person to be named a college baseball All-American and then win a Rookie of the Year award, an MVP award, a Gold Glove award, and a World Series championship in the majors. Munson built his legend in October. His career postseason batting average of .357 is simply phenomenal. He's the only catcher in MLB postseason history to record at least a .300 batting average, 20 RBIs, and 20 defensive caught stealings. While Johnny Bench hit .266 in the playoffs and Carlton Fisk hit .259, Munson dominated when it mattered most. His defensive skills were equally impressive, a 44.5% caught stealing percentage that ranked 11th all-time, surpassing even Bench. He caught 92.4% of complete games, the highest percentage ever, and had 9 consecutive seasons with over 1,000 innings caught. Modern statistics have only strengthened his case for the Hall of Fame. His career WWER of 46.0 is higher than 5 enshrined catchers, including Roy Campanella. Using advanced metrics like JAWS that balance peak performance with career length, Munson ranks 12th all-time among catchers, above 9 catchers already in Cooperstown. He's the highest-ranked eligible catcher not yet inducted. Now let's return to that tragic day and what really happened. The National Transportation Safety Board's investigation was thorough and unequivocal. The crash was caused by pilot error. On his final approach, Munson failed to extend his flaps, which helped planes fly slower during landing. Compounding this, he let his airspeed drop dangerously low. When the plane began stalling, he failed to apply enough power to recover. He also didn't use his pre-landing checklist and used non-standard approach patterns. The human details are deeply tragic. Both passengers survived and desperately tried to pull Munson from the cockpit, but he was trapped. The autopsy revealed he suffered a broken neck that caused immediate paralysis. But here's the final devastating detail. While Munson had fastened his lap belt, he wasn't wearing his shoulder harness. An expert later testified that if Munson had used his shoulder harness, he would have survived. Munson's legacy remains beautifully complex. He was the emotional engine of a Yankees dynasty. It took 17 years for the franchise to win another World Series after his death. Whether he'll ever reach Cooperstown remains an open question when the Veterans Committee considers him in 2027. But for those who watched him play, there's no debate. Thurman Munson was the heart of the matter. If this opened your eyes to the real Thurman Munson, smash that like button and subscribe for more untold stories from baseball history. What aspect of his legacy surprised you most? Let me know in the comments below. On October 22nd, 2024, baseball lost one of its most beloved figures when Fernando Valenzuela passed away at age 63. But his death marked the end of a life that was anything but tragic. This was a man who rose from the humblest beginnings to become a cultural phenomenon that changed baseball forever. Fernando Valenzuela's story begins in Echohuaquila, a tiny farming town in Sonora, Mexico. Born November 1st, 1960, he was the youngest of 12 children in a poor family of Mayo indigenous ancestry. His parents worked the land, struggling to make ends meet. Baseball wasn't even on the radar for most kids in his situation, yet Fernando would somehow journey from these dusty fields to the bright lights of Los Angeles, becoming the most unlikely superstar the sport had ever seen. His path to greatness started by pure accident. In 1979, legendary Dodgers scout Mike Brito was sent to Mexico to evaluate a shortstop prospect named Ali Usconga. But when 17-year-old Fernando struck out Usconga on 3 straight pitches, Brito completely forgot about the shortstop. That moment changed everything. The Dodgers purchased Fernando's contract for just $120,000, a bargain that would pay dividends beyond imagination. The young pitcher arrived in the Dodgers minor league system with raw talent but lacking the velocity scouts typically looked for in top prospects. Rather than give up on him, the organization made a brilliant decision. They had fellow pitcher Bobby Castillo teach Fernando to throw a screwball, one of baseball's most difficult and rarely used pitches. This unusual pitch, combined with Fernando's unique left-handed windup that included an iconic glance toward the sky, would become his signature. Fernando made his major league debut in September 1980 as a 19-year-old reliever. In just 10 appearances, he threw 17 2/3 scoreless innings, giving fans a tantalizing preview of what was to come. But nobody could have predicted what would happen next. The 1981 season changed everything, not just for Fernando, but for baseball itself. When starting pitcher Jerry Roos got injured just hours before opening day, the 20-year-old rookie was thrust into the starting rotation. What followed was one of the most remarkable stretches in baseball history. Fernando won his first 8 starts, all complete games, with 5 shutouts and a nearly perfect 0.50 earned run average. This is where the legend of Fernando Mania was born, and if you're enjoying this incredible story, make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments which part of Fernando's journey amazes you most. His rise was absolutely meteoric. Fernando's success wasn't just about statistics. His unusual appearance for an athlete, described as somewhat chubby, made him instantly relatable. Combined with his quiet confidence and that mesmerizing windup, he became magnetic television. Hall of Fame pitcher Carl Hubble called Fernando's screwball the best since his own. Batters had no idea how to handle this pitch that seemed to defy physics, breaking in the opposite direction of what they expected. The 1981 season, though shortened by a player's strike, saw Fernando lead the majors in shutouts and strikeouts while pacing the National League in complete games and innings pitched. He became the first and only player in baseball history to win both the Cy Young Award and Rookie of the Year in the same season. But his impact went far beyond individual accolades. Fernando's success created a cultural phenomenon that transcended sports. For decades, the relationship between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the city's Mexican-American community had been strained. In the 1950s, over 1,800 Mexican-American families were forcibly displaced from their homes in Chavez Ravine to make way for Dodger Stadium. This act left deep wounds in the community. Labor leader Cesar Chavez and other activists had famously refused to attend games as protest. Fernando's arrival provided healing. Here was a player who shared the community's language and heritage, and his dominance allowed them to reclaim their connection to a team that had previously symbolized their displacement. The effect was immediate and measurable. Latino attendance at Dodger Stadium, previously around 5%, soared to 50% on nights Fernando pitched. Radio stations broadcasting Dodgers games in Mexico jumped from 3 to 17. Spanish-language broadcasts in Los Angeles had more than twice the listening audience of their English counterparts. Hall of Fame broadcaster Jaime Jarrin stated that Fernando created more new fans than any other player in Major League history. Vin Scully described the phenomenon as bordering on a religious experience. Fernando became more than a baseball player. He was a cultural hero and beacon of hope, showing that achieving big dreams was possible regardless of circumstances. The financial side of Fernando's success tells another fascinating story. Following his historic rookie season, he faced contentious contract negotiations. In 1982, he demanded an increase from his $42,500 salary to $850,000, while the Dodgers offered just $350,000. As a second-year player without arbitration rights, Fernando had little leverage and eventually settled for $300,000 more than his previous contract. But in 1983, Fernando made history again by becoming the first player to win a $1 million salary through the newly established arbitration process. This was nearly double the league average and more than 28 times the minimum salary. A famous quote attributed to manager Tommy Lasorda noted that Fernando only knew 2 English words: more money. This period marked a dramatic shift in baseball economics. However, Fernando's incredible success came with a physical price. From 1981 to 1987, he had more wins and strikeouts than any other National League starter. He pitched 6 consecutive seasons with more than 250 innings, a workload now considered unsustainable. His signature screwball was described as almost a physical impossibility, requiring a violent wrist snap that placed considerable strain on his arm. The combination of this physically demanding pitch and an immense workload led to nagging shoulder problems that began to diminish his effectiveness. The toll became evident when he sat out the 1988 World Series postseason with a shoulder injury, missing the Dodgers' championship run. Although he managed to throw a no-hitter in 1990, the physical decline was permanent, and he was released by the Dodgers before the 1991 season. Fernando continued his professional career for 6 more seasons, playing for the California Angels, Baltimore Orioles, Philadelphia Phillies, San Diego Padres, and St. Louis Cardinals before retiring in 1997. He also pitched in Mexico until the 2007 to 2008 season, maintaining his connection to his homeland throughout his career. Following his playing days, Fernando's lasting connection to the game and Los Angeles community continued beautifully. He returned to the Dodgers organization in 2003, serving as a revered Spanish-language broadcaster for over 2 decades until his death. His quiet, humble demeanor and strong connection to the Latino community remained as present in his post-playing career as during his prime. Fernando was heavily involved in community initiatives, including the Amigos de Fernando program, which brought children to games, hosting charity events, and distributing holiday gifts at low-income housing shopping complexes. The continuity of his role as ambassador demonstrated that his legacy wasn't tied solely to athletic performance, but represented genuine, sustained commitment to his community. Fernando's enduring impact has been officially recognized on numerous fronts. In 2023, the Dodgers retired his iconic number 34 jersey, placing him among the franchise's most influential figures. He's also a member of the Mexican Baseball Hall of Fame, Caribbean Baseball Hall of Fame, and California Sports Hall of Fame. The cultural significance of Fernando extends far beyond the baseball diamond. His success opened doors for countless Latino players who followed in his footsteps. Before Fernando, Latino representation in Major League Baseball was limited, and players often faced language barriers and cultural isolation. Fernando's prominence showed that players could maintain their cultural identity while achieving greatness in America's pastime. His influence reached into entertainment and media as well. Fernando appeared in movies, television shows, and commercials, becoming one of the first Latino athletes to achieve true crossover appeal. His image graced magazine covers from Sports Illustrated to Time, making him a household name across multiple demographics. This visibility was crucial during an era when Latino representation in mainstream American media was scarce. The economic impact of Fernando Mania cannot be overstated. Merchandise sales skyrocketed whenever Fernando pitched. His jersey became one of the best-selling items in baseball history. Concession sales at Dodger Stadium increased dramatically on his pitching days, as families who had never attended baseball games before flocked to see their hero in action. Local businesses in Los Angeles experienced booms on Fernando's game days, as the Latino community embraced this opportunity to celebrate their heritage through sports. Fernando's pitching style also influenced the game itself. His success with the screwball inspired other pitchers to experiment with the pitch, though few could master it as he did. Pitching coaches began studying his mechanics, trying to understand how someone with his build and unconventional delivery could be so effective. His approach challenged traditional thinking about what a successful pitcher should look like. The community programs Fernando supported during his playing career and beyond demonstrate his commitment to giving back. He regularly visited schools in Latino neighborhoods, encouraging children to pursue education alongside their dreams. His charity work included funding scholarships for underprivileged students and supporting youth baseball leagues in Mexico and Los Angeles. Fernando Valenzuela's life represents triumph over adversity and the unifying power of sports. His improbable journey from humble beginnings created a cultural force that transcended baseball. Fernando Mania wasn't just a fleeting fad, but a socio-political phenomenon. It helped mend deep community wounds and inspired a generation of Mexican Americans to pursue their dreams. His iconic presence, defined by that unorthodox wind-up and nearly forgotten screwball, was inseparable from his impact as a quiet, humble hero. In his post-playing career, Fernando cemented his status as a lasting icon, providing a direct link to new generations of fans through his broadcasting work. The retirement of his jersey number and numerous Hall of Fame inductions are fitting tributes to a man whose impact on baseball and culture is arguably unmatched. The passing of El Toro closes a chapter on a life as profound and complex as the game he played, leaving behind a legacy that will continue resonating for generations. If this story of triumph and cultural impact inspired you, please subscribe for more incredible sports stories and share your thoughts about Fernando's lasting influence in the comments below. His legacy proves that sports can truly change the world. Baseball's biggest addict just died, and the truth behind Dave Parker's death reveals a story darker than most fans knew. The Cobra passed away on June 28, 2025, at age 74 from Parkinson's disease complications. But his death came just 29 days before he was supposed to be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. This timing wasn't just cruel luck. It was the final chapter in a life filled with addiction, controversy, and broken promises that kept him out of Cooperstown for decades. Dave Parker was once baseball royalty. In the late 1970s, he was everything a superstar should be. He could hit for power and average, steal bases, play amazing defense, and had an arm that could throw out runners from anywhere in right field. He won back-to-back National League batting titles in 1977 and 1978. In 1978, he was the unanimous MVP winner after leading the league in multiple categories. He was the All-Star Game MVP in 1979 and helped the Pittsburgh Pirates win the World Series that same year. Parker seemed destined for greatness, but then came the contract that changed everything. In January 1979, Parker signed a 5-year deal that made him baseball's first $1 million per year player. The timing couldn't have been worse for his reputation. Pittsburgh was falling apart economically. The steel industry had collapsed, taking 95,000 jobs with it. Families were struggling to put food on the table while Parker was getting rich playing a game. The fans turned on him immediately. They booed him relentlessly at home games. Worse than that, angry fans threw batteries, nuts, and bolts at him while he played right field. Parker later admitted that being the first black player to make that kind of money made the situation even harder. The city that once loved him now saw him as a symbol of everything wrong with professional sports. He went from hero to villain almost overnight. The money was just the beginning of Parker's problems. What fans didn't know was that their former hero was developing a serious cocaine addiction. From 1979 to 1982, Parker was using drugs regularly. He later testified that cocaine was constantly available because of his celebrity status. His performance started to suffer, and by his own admission, his game was slipping because of the drugs. Everything came crashing down in 1985 during the Pittsburgh drug trials. This wasn't some minor scandal. It was a federal investigation that exposed widespread cocaine use throughout Major League Baseball. Parker found himself at the center of it all. To avoid criminal charges, he accepted legal immunity in exchange for testifying against drug dealers. In a packed courtroom with reporters from every major news outlet watching, Parker admitted his addiction to the world. His testimony was devastating for his reputation. He confessed to using cocaine with consistency for 3 years. He admitted that his drug use had made his performance worse. The man who was supposed to be a role model for kids had become the poster child for everything wrong with baseball in the 1980s. The scandal didn't just hurt Parker personally. It changed how the entire sport dealt with drug issues. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Commissioner Peter Ueberroth suspended Parker and several other players for a full year. Though the suspension was later reduced, Parker had to donate 10% of his salary to drug programs, submit to mandatory drug testing for the rest of his career, and perform 100 hours of community service. But the real punishment came from his own team. The Pittsburgh Pirates, now under new ownership, decided they didn't want to pay Parker the millions still owed on his 1979 contract. They sued him, claiming his drug use was a breach of contract that negatively affected his performance and poisoned the team's relationship with fans. Parker was forced to settle out of court for significantly less money than he was originally promised. If you're shocked by how far Parker fell from grace, make sure to subscribe and let us know in the comments what you think about athletes who let addiction destroy their careers. His story shows just how quickly fame and fortune can disappear. The lawsuit left Parker bitter and angry. He later said he felt nothing but malice and hate for the Pirates organization. He believed they failed to acknowledge his years as one of baseball's best players. The relationship between Parker and Pittsburgh seemed permanently damaged. The drugs had cost him money, respect, and his place in the community that once adored him. To make matters worse, he was traded to Oakland in December 1987, ending his time with the team that had made him a star. Parker's problems extended far beyond Pittsburgh. When he became eligible for the Baseball Hall of Fame, voters remembered the scandal more than his statistics. For 15 years, he appeared on the writers' ballot. Despite having over 2,700 hits, 339 home runs, and 1,493 RBIs, he never received more than 25% of the vote. The 75% needed for induction seemed impossible to reach. His association with the drug trials had effectively blackballed him from baseball's most exclusive club. Voters felt that his off-field behavior outweighed his on-field accomplishments. The same scandal that had cost him money and respect was now keeping him out of Cooperstown. Other players from the drug trials, like Keith Hernandez, faced similar struggles getting Hall of Fame recognition. Parker's career did have some bright moments after the scandal. He had a late resurgence with the Cincinnati Reds in 1985, finishing second in MVP voting. He won another World Series with the Oakland Athletics in 1989. But these achievements couldn't erase the damage done by the drug trials and the years of negative publicity that followed. After retiring in 1991, Parker largely stayed out of the spotlight. He had been one of only 5 players in history with at least 500 doubles, 300 home runs, 150 stolen bases, and 2,700 hits. His statistical resume was clearly Hall of Fame worthy, but the voters who remembered his cocaine years weren't ready to forgive and forget. Time slowly began to heal some wounds. In 2012, Parker was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, though he didn't make it public until 2013. The diagnosis was hard for someone who had always seen himself as a baseball warrior. He initially struggled to accept help from others, finding it difficult to show vulnerability after years of projecting strength and confidence. But Parker's battle with Parkinson's started to change how people saw him. He established a foundation to raise awareness about the disease and support research efforts. His public struggle with a debilitating condition showed a more human side that fans hadn't seen during his playing days. The man who had once been defined by his swagger and controversy was now fighting a different kind of battle. The disease led to an unexpected reconciliation with Pittsburgh. When Parker returned for a 1979 team reunion, fans who had once thrown objects at him gave him a heartfelt standing ovation. The city that had turned against him decades earlier was finally ready to separate the player from his past mistakes. In 2022, he was inducted into the inaugural Pittsburgh Pirates Hall of Fame. Parker's health continued to decline as Parkinson's took its toll. He needed double knee replacement surgery from years of wear and tear on his body. The once powerful athlete was becoming increasingly frail, but his courage in facing these challenges earned him respect from fans and former players alike. On December 8, 2024, the Classic Baseball Era Committee finally gave Parker what he had been waiting for since 1997. He was elected to the National Baseball Hall of Fame, receiving 14 of 16 votes. After decades of being shut out by writers who couldn't forget his drug use, a special committee was willing to focus on his complete body of work. The election should have been the perfect ending to Parker's story. After all the controversy, lawsuits, and health problems, he was finally going to take his place among baseball's immortals. He had kept his planned induction speech for 15 years, waiting for this moment. Everything seemed to be falling into place for a triumphant conclusion to his complicated career. But fate had other plans. On June 28, 2025, just 29 days before his scheduled induction ceremony, Dave Parker died from complications related to Parkinson's disease. He would never get to deliver the speech he had been holding on to for so long. He would never get to stand on the stage in Cooperstown and receive the recognition he felt he deserved. The induction ceremony went ahead as planned on July 27, 2025, but it was his son who delivered Parker's speech. It was a bittersweet moment that perfectly captured the tragedy and triumph of Dave Parker's life. He had finally made it to the Hall of Fame, but he couldn't be there to enjoy it. Subscribe to hear more stories about baseball's most controversial figures, and tell us in the comments whether you think Parker's legacy is defined more by his achievements or his mistakes. Dave Parker's story reminds us that talent alone isn't enough. His journey from superstar to addict to Hall of Famer shows that redemption is possible, even if it comes too late. The Cobra finally got his recognition, but the price of his earlier choices followed him until the very end. The truth about Lou Brock's death at 81 reveals the saddest end to a legendary career. But behind that tragic final chapter lies one of baseball's most inspiring stories of triumph over impossible odds. Born into crushing poverty on June 18, 1939, in Louisiana cotton plantations, Lou Brock faced a childhood that would break most people. His father abandoned the family right after his birth, leaving his mother to work endless menial jobs just to survive. Young Lou would lie awake at night, terrified by the sight of unemployed people and run-down homes around him. This wasn't just worry about the future, it was pure terror about ending up in the same hopeless situation. The small town of Collinston was a mixed-race community where hope was rare and opportunities even rarer. Lou watched grown men with no work and families living in falling-apart houses. Every night he stared at the ceiling, his mind racing with fears about his own future. Would he end up like the broken men he saw every day? This constant anxiety ate at him, but it also planted a seed that would grow into something powerful. That fear created what people later called his rage to succeed. This burning drive would fuel everything he did for the rest of his life. Ironically, baseball entered his world as punishment. In 4th grade, he threw a spitball and got sent to the library to research baseball legends like Joe DiMaggio and Jackie Robinson. While reading about these heroes, he discovered something that changed everything. These players weren't just famous, they were rich. Baseball could be his escape from poverty. This discovery hit Lou like lightning. Sports wasn't just fun and games. It was a business where talented people could earn more money than he had ever imagined. The same drive that kept him awake at night with worry now had a target. Baseball became his answer to every childhood fear he had ever felt. Despite his obvious talent at Union High School, where he dominated as both pitcher and hitter, no college offered him an athletic scholarship. His raw ability was clear, but college scouts looked for more polish than a poor kid from Louisiana could provide. Desperate to continue his education, he enrolled at Southern University on a partial academic scholarship. But when his grades slipped and he lost that scholarship, his dreams seemed crushed. That's when his legendary determination took over. He tried out for the baseball team and spent 4 weeks doing nothing but chasing fly balls. Other players got to hit and practice real skills while Lou just ran after ball after ball. Day after day, he endured the humiliation of being treated like he didn't belong. But he refused to quit. Then one day, his desperation reached its peak. He sprinted after every single ball until his body gave out, and he collapsed on the field. When he woke up, the coaches finally gave him a chance to bat. Lou stepped up to the plate and launched 5 consecutive balls over the right field fence. Just like that, he earned his spot on the team and led Southern University to the 1959 championship. This moment proved that his success wasn't just about natural talent. It was about an unbreakable will to overcome any obstacle. The Chicago Cubs signed him in 1960 for $30,000, a fortune for someone from his background, but his early professional years were painful. The Cubs had no clear development plan, and different coaches gave him conflicting advice every day. One told him to hit to the opposite field, another said to bunt, and a third wanted him to pull everything. His intense personality made things worse because he pressed too hard on every single play. The Cubs used a strange system where they rotated coaches constantly. Just when Lou would start to understand one approach, a new coach would arrive with completely different ideas. This chaos was the worst possible environment for someone with his anxious drive. He needed stability and clear direction, but instead got confusion and mixed messages. Things got so bad that a Chicago newspaper writer called him the worst outfielder in baseball history. His batting average dropped to just 251 in 1964, and the Cubs decided they had seen enough. What happened next would go down as one of the most lopsided trades in sports history. Have you ever wondered how one moment can change everything? Drop a comment below about a time when a big change in your life turned out better than expected. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible baseball stories like this one. On June 15, 1964, the Cubs traded Lou Brock to the St. Louis Cardinals for pitcher Ernie Broglio. Everyone thought the Cubs got the better deal because Broglio was an established star while Brock was considered a disappointment. Nobody could have predicted what would happen next. Cardinals manager Johnny Keane did something revolutionary. Instead of micromanaging Lou like the Cubs did, he gave him complete freedom. He told Lou to steal bases whenever the time felt right instead of waiting for specific signals. This trust transformed everything. Lou's anxious energy finally had a positive outlet. The results were immediate and spectacular. Lou batted .348 for the rest of the 1964 season and stole 33 bases compared to just 10 with the Cubs. More importantly, he helped drag the Cardinals from 8th place all the way to a World Series championship over the mighty New York Yankees. The trade became known as Brock for Broglio and is still used today as an example of how wrong experts can be. This was just the beginning of Lou's legendary career. He finished with 938 career stolen bases, a record that stood for 12 years. His single-season record of 118 steals in 1974 seemed impossible to achieve. Lou himself had doubted he could ever break Maury Wills's previous record of 104 steals. He thought it would take someone who didn't hit for much power. And ironically, that's exactly what happened in his record-breaking season. Lou dominated the base paths like no one before him. He led the National League in stolen bases for 8 different seasons and had 12 straight years with at least 50 steals. In 1978, he became the first active player to have an award named after him when the National League created the Lou Brock Award for its annual stolen base champion. But Lou was much more than just speed. He joined the exclusive 3,000 hit club with 3,023 career hits and maintained a 293 batting average. In 1967, he became the first player ever to hit 20 home runs and steal 50 bases in the same season. The next year, he led the National League in doubles, triples, and stolen bases. This combination hadn't been achieved since Honus Wagner in 1908. His World Series performances were legendary. His career World Series batting average of 391 is the highest for any player with more than 20 games. His 14 World Series stolen bases tied an all-time record. In the 1968 World Series alone, he collected 13 hits, tying another record. When the pressure was highest, Lou performed his best. After retiring in 1979, Lou stayed connected to baseball as a coach and consultant. He helped the Minnesota Twins, Los Angeles Dodgers, and Montreal Expos improve their base running. All 3 teams won World Series championships shortly after working with him. He also worked as a television broadcaster and ran a successful florist business in St. Louis for over 20 years. Lou created a special connection with Cardinals fans through his Brockabrella, a miniature umbrella hat that fans could wear during rainy games. This playful touch showed his warm personality and love for the community that had embraced him. But Lou's later years brought serious health challenges. He battled diabetes for many years, and in 2015, complications forced doctors to amputate part of his left leg. Most people would have retreated from public life, but not Lou. He returned the very next season to throw out the first pitch at a Cardinals game, proudly wearing his prosthetic leg. This moment perfectly captured the same determination that had defined his entire life. In April 2017, doctors diagnosed him with multiple myeloma, a dangerous blood and bone marrow cancer. After months of difficult treatment, his doctors announced he was cancer-free. Unfortunately, the disease returned and ultimately contributed to his death on September 6, 2020, at age 81. The man who once had a rage to succeed found peace through his Christian faith later in life. Both Lou and his wife Jackie became ordained ministers. His wife said faith was the biggest part of him, making it hard to think of him as just a baseball player. The anxious drive that once kept him awake at night had transformed into a spiritual calling that brought him true peace. Lou's son revealed something beautiful about his father's character. Lou would quietly visit sick children in hospitals without telling anyone or seeking recognition. He also said his father had mathematically defined the base stealing concept, proving that his success came from intelligence as much as speed. The terrified boy from the Louisiana cotton fields had become a man who brought joy to others facing their own struggles. When Lou died, tributes poured in from across the baseball world. Cardinals chairman Bill DeWitt Jr. called him one of the most revered members of the organization and a wonderful mentor. Hall of Famer Ozzie Smith praised him as a class act who could change games with his legs and bat. Lou Brock's death marked the end of an era, but his legacy lives on. He proved that with enough determination, anyone can overcome impossible circumstances. His story reminds us that our greatest struggles often become our greatest strengths. What aspect of Lou Brock's incredible journey inspired you most? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to hear more amazing stories of athletes who refuse to give up.
Pete Rose died at 83, and honestly, the way he lived his final decades was truly sad. The man who once hustled his way into baseball history ended up hustling for autographs in Las Vegas casinos, banned from the sport he loved most. His death on September 30th, 2024, marked the end of a tragic fall from grace that lasted over 3 decades. But let's go back to when Pete Rose was actually worth celebrating. Before he became baseball's most famous outcast, Rose was legitimately one of the greatest players who ever lived. This guy earned the nickname Charlie Hustle because of how hard he played every single game. He would dive headfirst into bases, sprint to first base on walks, and play with an intensity that made other players look lazy. His numbers were absolutely incredible. Rose holds 4 major baseball records that might never be broken. He had 4,156 hits, played in 3,562 games, had 14,053 at-bats, and collected 3,215 singles. These aren't just good numbers, they're mind-blowing numbers that show how long and how well he played the game. Rose was part of something special in Cincinnati called the Big Red Machine. This team won back-to-back World Series titles in 1975 and 1976, and Rose was right in the middle of it all. He played alongside other legends like Johnny Bench and Joe Morgan, but Rose was often the heart of that team. His hustle and determination set the tone for everyone else. In 1973, Rose won the National League Most Valuable Player Award. He also won the World Series MVP in 1975. He made the All-Star team 17 times and won 3 batting titles. In 1985, he broke one of baseball's most sacred records when he got his 492nd hit, passing Ty Cobb as the all-time hits leader. The crowd went crazy that night, and Rose seemed destined for the Hall of Fame. What do you think Pete Rose's biggest mistake was? Was it the gambling itself, or was it lying about it for so many years? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe because we're just getting to the really sad part of this story. But then 1989 happened, and everything changed forever. While Rose was managing the Cincinnati Reds, rumors started spreading that he was betting on baseball games. This wasn't just any rumor either. People were saying he bet on his own team's games, which is basically the worst thing you can do in baseball. Major League Baseball took these accusations very seriously. They hired a lawyer named John Dowd to investigate what Rose was really doing. Dowd talked to Rose's friends, his bookmakers, and anyone else who might know the truth. What he found was pretty damning. The investigation showed that Rose had a serious gambling problem. One of his former friends said Rose lost $450,000 in just 3 months during 1987. That's an enormous amount of money, especially back then. But the worst part was that Dowd found evidence that Rose bet on 52 Cincinnati Reds games in 1987 alone. This violated baseball's Rule 21, which is probably the most important rule in the sport. It says that anyone who bets on a game they're supposed to be playing or managing gets banned permanently. No exceptions, no second chances. This rule exists because of the Black Sox scandal in 1919, when players threw the World Series for money. Rose could have fought these charges in court, but instead he made a deal. On August 24, 1989, he agreed to be placed on baseball's permanently ineligible list. In exchange, Major League Baseball wouldn't officially say he was guilty. Rose probably thought he could get reinstated later, but that never happened. Just 1 week after this agreement was signed, something tragic occurred that made Rose's situation even worse. Commissioner Bart Giamatti, who had handled Rose's case, died of a heart attack. Giamatti had made it clear that there was no deal for Rose to come back. With Giamatti gone, future commissioners were afraid to overturn his decision. So Rose found himself completely banned from baseball at age 48. He couldn't work for any team, couldn't be around major league players, and couldn't even attend official baseball events. For a man who lived and breathed baseball, this was like being sentenced to prison. Rose had to figure out how to make money, so he started doing autograph signings. He became one of the most active autograph signers in sports history, often appearing at card shows and memorabilia events in Las Vegas. He would add funny messages to his signatures like "Hit King" or 4256 hits 0 steroids. It was kind of sad watching this legend reduced to signing baseballs for money. His troubles got even worse in 1990 when Rose was charged with tax evasion. Turns out he hadn't been reporting his gambling winnings or his autograph income to the IRS. He pleaded guilty and spent 5 months in a minimum security prison. Then in 2004, he got hit with a nearly $1 million tax lien for more unpaid taxes. For 15 years after his ban, Rose kept denying that he ever bet on baseball. He would go on TV shows and interviews swearing he was innocent, but polls showed that 84% of baseball fans believed he was lying. His reputation kept getting worse and worse. Then in 2004, Rose finally admitted the truth in his autobiography called My Prison Without Bars. After lying for 15 years, he confessed that yes, he had bet on baseball games, but he claimed he only bet on his team to win, never to lose. He thought this made it less bad somehow. Most people saw this confession as fake and calculated. Rose wasn't being honest because he felt guilty. He was being honest because he thought it might help him get back into baseball. The timing was too convenient, and the confession felt like another manipulation. In 2015, the current commissioner Rob Manfred reviewed Rose's case and denied his request for reinstatement. Manfred said Rose hadn't shown any real change in his life and was still gambling on other sports. Even worse, Manfred said documents proved that Rose's claim about only betting on his team to win was a lie. Rose spent his final years still signing autographs and still hoping to get into the Hall of Fame. He never really took full responsibility for what he did, and he never seemed to understand why people were so angry at him. His life became a sad cycle of appearances at memorabilia shows and failed attempts to get reinstated. The really tragic part about Rose's later years was how bitter and defensive he became. Instead of showing genuine remorse, he often acted like he was the victim in all this. He would complain about being treated unfairly and argue that other Hall of Famers had done worse things. This attitude made it even harder for people to forgive him. Rose also seemed to miss the bigger picture about why his gambling was so damaging to baseball. The sport depends on fans believing that games are fair and honest. When a manager bets on his own team, it raises questions about whether he's making decisions to help his team win or to help his bets pay off. Even if Rose only bet on his team to win, he was still putting his gambling ahead of his responsibilities as a manager. His pattern of lying and then finally confessing only when it might help him showed a lack of real character growth. People might have been more forgiving if he had admitted his mistakes right away and shown genuine change over the years. Instead, Rose seemed more interested in managing his image than actually becoming a better person. The comparison to Shoeless Joe Jackson is interesting too. Jackson was banned over 100 years ago for the Black Sox scandal, but many people believe he was innocent or at least not as guilty as the other players. Rose, on the other hand, clearly broke the rules and then lied about it for decades. When Rose died in September 2024, something unexpected happened. In May 2025, Commissioner Manfred made a surprising announcement. He removed Rose from the permanently ineligible list, along with Shoeless Joe Jackson and 16 other dead players who had been banned. Manfred's reasoning was that permanent bans are meant to protect baseball from living people who might cause problems. Once someone dies, they can't hurt the game anymore, so the ban should end too. This decision means Rose is now eligible to be considered for the Hall of Fame. But here's the thing, being eligible doesn't mean he'll get in. The Hall of Fame has its own rules, and back in 1991, they voted to keep out anyone on baseball's banned list. Now that Rose is off that list, a committee called the Classic Baseball Era Committee will decide if he deserves to be inducted. This committee meets in December 2027, and Rose would need 75% of their votes to get in. Even in death, the debate continues about whether his amazing playing career outweighs his gambling scandal and years of lying about it. Pete Rose's story is ultimately about wasted potential and poor choices. He had everything a baseball player could want: talent, records, championships, and respect. But he threw it all away because he couldn't stop gambling and couldn't tell the truth when he got caught. The saddest part might be that Rose never seemed to truly understand what he had lost. He spent his final decades as a bitter, banned legend, signing autographs for strangers instead of coaching young players or working in the game he claimed to love so much. So what do you think? Should Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame now that he's dead, or should his gambling and lying keep him out forever? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about baseball's biggest controversies and scandals.